Hi, this is the word study introduction presentation for the October 29th Monday meeting, where we will analyze your case study students' spelling inventory and then talk about the word study lesson that subsequently follows the analysis of the spelling inventory. In this presentation, you will learn what those things on that chart that I handed you today mean and what we're going to be looking for when we're completing our spelling inventory. This information comes from the Words Their Way textbook, chapters 1 through 3. Be sure to use your Cornell notes to take notes and to ask any questions if you need to. A word study is an integrated way to teach phonics, spelling, and vocabulary to improve literacy skills. And research shows that doing word studies, starting with a spelling inventory and then creating a lesson based on the inventory results shows improvement in orthographic knowledge of children and adolescents. So by doing these types of assessments with your students, you are building not only their ability to spell, but their ability to read. Orthography is the writing system of a language. In English, we have the alphabet, letters A through Z. So our orthography is our ABC alphabet. Remember that phonological awareness is sound, and those letters have sounds, what we're teaching when we teach phonological awareness. Orthography is the writing of those letters. So now we're moving into actual manipulating of pen and pencil or words in print or letters in print. There is a significant relationship between reading and spelling. It is widely known that if you are an avid reader, you're a pretty good speller. And the stages of spelling development are related to the stages of reading development. They go hand in hand. Once a student knows how to spell a word, they'll be able to read the word. Why do we care about orthographic development? Students who have difficulty decoding also have difficulty with comprehension. If a kid doesn't understand how to say the word, they're not going to understand what the word means. Therefore, comprehension of a text, whether it's a one-page, one-paragraph article, they're not going to understand it if they don't know the words in the article. So obviously, decoding difficulties lead to and hinder comprehension. Students who have difficulty with spelling almost always have difficulty with decoding, and vice versa. If a student can't look at a word and break it apart and put it back together, blending and segmenting we talked about in phonological awareness, the students aren't going to be able to decode. And as we see in the previous statement, if a student can't decode very well, they can't comprehend what they're reading. Our overall goal in teaching reading is to teach kids how to understand what they're reading. So this is extremely important for us to teach our children, our students, so that they are able to make meaning of what they read. There are shallow and deep orthographies. Shallow meaning that students are able to recognize that there's a sound symbol relationship, and letters, so that each letter has a sound. That's shallow. Student can just look at a letter and tell you what it is. They see the shape of the letter A. It looks like a tent with a line through it. They see that and they recognize the sound that that letter makes. That's our shallow orthography. A deep orthography is the idea that a student would be able to put letters together to make a particular sound, like our digraphs. Look at the example for the sound F, or for the letter F. If a student knew that a PH together made that F or the F sound, then they're using a deep orthography. Research into the development of orthographic knowledge suggests that it proceeds through 3 broad and increasingly complex phases. If you've noticed so far in everything we've talked about, in all of our seminars that we've talked about material that I need you guys to know, hopefully you recognize that we're starting at the bottom and we're building on knowledge. So in orthographic development, that's happening here too. There are alphabetic phases, patterns, and meaning. And when we're teaching orthographic development, we have to think of this as kind of an age or grade level thing. The alphabetic development comes with the early dudes. The pattern development comes sort of middle level, upper first, second, third grade. Meaning comes a little later, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. So our students are building their knowledge from the bottom up, starting with alphabetic development, pattern work, and then meaning. Here are some examples. For alphabetic, children's theories of how spelling works are driven by an alphabetic expectation. Here, students are kind of understanding that letters matched up go from left to right and how we read them. They may hear the big parts of words, and usually that's consonants. They don't always get the vowels this early. But you could see the first four, I, L, K, M, and dog. You can kind of tell what the student's writing there. They get that the I comes first and is at the left, and then there's another word next to it. Notice even a space there. The kids are recognizing when they're putting sentences together that there's space between words in a sentence. So that particular four-piece sentence there is I like my dog. You'll see that HKN somehow means chicken, and drum. Think of what the DR sounds like, and notice how it's spelled, JRUM. If a student was hearing JRUM when they were listening and wrote this down, then they're obviously going to write what they hear. Even though it's misspelled at this point, they're working on the alphabet and putting those things together right now. So this is okay for those kids. So at alphabet stage, the kids are learning. They're just putting letters in order and putting letters down that sound like what they're hearing. In pattern phase, this is where students start more noticing patterns in words. More conceptually advanced pattern stage, children begin to recognize that spelling doesn't always work in a strictly left to right fashion. Like train, T-R-A-N-E, it's spelled here. That's not a normal spelling for the word train. Here, the student understands that there is a rule where that silent E makes that long A vowel sound in the middle of the word there. So the student spelled train as they heard it based on rules that they already knew, but they misspelled it. You'll see that a lot on your spelling inventory. Think of the word through. And if a student hasn't learned the pattern O-U-G-H yet, and they needed to spell the word through, they may spell it with the sound that they know, the letter U. And then way, which could be tricky if they didn't know the GH pattern at the end of way. And then upper grades are going to be using the development stage of meaning more. They're going to be learning this in the upper levels. Once they've got alphabetic and pattern down, they move into meaning. This is where children begin to look at the way words and word parts come together to make bigger, more complex words. They understand here that words are parts that come together in some cases with prefixes, suffixes, which are also called affixes, Latin and Greek root words and base words, like misspelling. Misspelling has a prefix and a suffix with the base word as spell. The student understands that those things exist in this word, but they missed either the beginning of the word spell or the S on the prefix in misspelling here. If you are piquing someone's interest, that is the P-I-Q-U-E, pique, not P-E-E-K, but this student is recognizing that there is meaning to that. And then congratulate, I still see congratulate misspelled with a D all the time because that's what it sounds like. The levels of spelling development fall within the alphabet, the pattern, and the meaning phases. Starting with the emergent learners. You've studied emergent in a different situation too. This is an emergent speller. It's usually about pre-K to first grade. They move up from emergent spellers to letter name alphabetic spellers, where we're moving out of alphabet and more into pattern phase. That's kindergarten to early third. Within word pattern moves a little bit closer to pattern, a little bit closer to meaning. First grade to middle of fourth. Syllables and affixes are upper grade level, moving out of that pattern phase a little bit more toward meaning, grades 3 through 8. And derivational relations, I like to think of these as science words or math words, big giant words like metamorphosis. Derivational relations pretty much falls under meaning because the students are going to need to be able to chunk big words into smaller parts to understand the smaller parts to make a whole word. And this usually happens when the students are a little bit older and able to handle the chunking. So from grades 5 to 12. The emergent level, here they recognize that letters make symbols. They use letters in their name to spell lots of words. So they know how to spell their own name, and then they make words using those letters. And here they may be able to use conventional letters toward the end as well as conventions of writing. So a lot of times this is big letters, I think, like I mentioned earlier, consonants, and then they learn how left to right, writing from left to right. Letter name alphabetic is where the students using alliteration and rhyming initial consonant and ending consonant sounds, adding vowels sometimes, but like the word train, not quite understanding how to use the vowels in there or what the spelling of the vowels are. And at the end of the stage, students can spell single syllable words conventionally. I think here of the vowel, well, the word family at, and how you can change the first letter in front of the word family at to make multiple words. When students are able to manipulate the word cat to pat or hat, that's where they're at the end of letter name alphabetic. If they can start manipulating that word around and turn it from, say, pat to tap, they're moving on into the next phase, which is within word level. Here, students use but confuse long vowel patterns like train for train, has difficulties with those sight words like the IGHT, and has difficulty with diphthongs, those oi or ow sounds. Syllables and affixes are those, the syllables, are parts of words. Affixes are prefixes and suffixes that we add at the beginning and or the end of words. Here, students aren't sure when double consonants are necessary. If we're adding ed or ing to a word, sometimes most of the time, you have to double up on your consonants there. So shopping wouldn't be SHOPING. We need to double that P if we're adding an ing, SHOPPING. Here, students aren't sure when to drop the E and add ED. This is one of my favorite lessons, is drop the E and add ing. Isn't sure what to do with the Y when you add an S. Don't forget that's where you add an IES when you're making something plural if it ends in a Y. So we have to teach these rules so that students know how to manipulate the syllables and affixes. Here also, students aren't sure how to spell common prefixes or suffixes. So we have to teach explicitly prefixes and suffixes. That would be opposition, you see there. Great creative spelling, though. In derivational relations, remember that's about 5th grade through 8th grade, could be even higher than that. These are big, big words, and students aren't sure what to do with mystery vowels like opposition or criticize. Criticize doesn't sound like there's just a little I in the middle of that word there, but that's all there is. Isn't sure how to use knowledge of word relationships to spell words with common roots. So we need to teach roots like Greek and Latin root words so that students understand diction means to speak, because DICT is the root that would tell me that diction has to do with speaking or writing. What is a word study and how can I use it in my classroom? It's an active process in which students categorize words and pictures in their developmental spelling level through the use of sorts, and we're going to call them word sorts. So I'm going to note the vocabulary that I want you to specifically notice here. It's an active process. Categorize words and pictures in their level. This is where we give the spelling inventory. We have to know their level so that then we can build our active process so that students can categorize words and pictures at their level. Word sorts are those things that we can help students use to practice spelling, to practice vocabulary, and phonics activities. In a sort, you have students organizing information into different categories, looking at whether they're similar to or different from particular categories. For example, my example earlier with the at word family, you might have a word card with the at word family and a bunch of letters, and you want the student to put the correct letter in front of that word family to create a word. That's a word sort. In sorts, students match words or pictures to specific keywords, and sorts allow students to observe consistent patterns in English orthography, like the CVCE, that's sneaky E rule that we have in English. How do they work? Teachers select a few vocabulary words from each reading selection related to a spelling reading pattern which students use but confuse for instruction. Students engage in the sort and the word study activities to master levels of word study, and then continually assessing to continue to improve students' ability to manipulate words and build on their spelling level. The purpose for word studies is to teach students how to discover irregularities, patterns, and rules of English, and to increase students' reading, spelling, and vocabulary knowledge of specific words. These are the different types of sorts that you might use. For your word study lesson, I do not dictate which one you need to do. You can use a picture sort, you can use a word sort, you can use a closed sort, however you want to do it. And I want you to find one that works best for you and your students. At this point, I've not seen a writing sort, unless we consider something that you might do on a foldable, but that's not really a sort. So I've seen lots of picture sorts, lots of word sorts. At times, a speed sort is great if the student is able to handle it. Sometimes students panic under speed or time situation. So you want to make sure that you and your case study student are on the same page with that. This is what some of them might look like. You see at the top just a worksheet that I would actually cut out the words on the bottom. You see tube and cute and such and use and club. I would cut those out, and you can just use them as they are cut out. You can glue them to cards to make them a little bit bigger and easier to manipulate. But then the student would move or sort the words to the appropriate category. In this case, we're looking at the vowel U with the short vowel, that's the one with the little U shape on top of it, and the long vowel sound, that with the dash on top of it. So any word in that section where you cut up the words that would fit in each category, you have the student sort the words to that category. The oddball category is great to have in there because if the student recognizes that there isn't a short vowel sound in a word, nor is there a long U sound in the word, it goes in the oddball category. And you can use that to ask more questions, to get students to think of other words that might have that same sound, and so on. For the one on the right with the SQU, THR, SHR, SCR, and so on, same thing. You would cut up these pieces into their smaller parts. The bolded letters of the short SQR, THR, and so on, those are your categories or your topics, and then have the words cut out into their parts and have the students sort the words based on what category they belong in. So for squeeze, the first word, the student would move the word squeeze to fall under the SQU category. Same thing with squirt. They would move that word under the SQU category. So this is just an idea of what a word sort would look like and what you're going to do once you've got your case study spelling inventory analyzed. Your Words Their Way textbook has word sorts in it that you could copy and cut out. I do suggest using the Words Their Way textbook or the fcrr.org website when it comes to writing your lesson plan. Again, I specifically like FCRR because those student center activities are explicitly written out for you with directions and all of the materials that you will need already there for you, and you would just have to copy that information into your lesson plan. So definitely consider the fcrr.org student center activities for this particular lesson plan writing. If you wish to go out onto the internet, you will find all kinds of things. Just remember that because teachers pay teachers or Pinterest looks real good, doesn't necessarily always mean it's the best researched possible thing out there. So be sure to vet your resources very, very carefully and use something that you would want to show your university instructor. That is it for Word Study Introduction. Good luck with your spelling inventory on Wednesday, and I will see you guys then.